So this is influential video game characters to women, minorities, and LGBTQ+. We'll get into it in a moment, but this is a subject matter very important to us, and we do want to we want to talk about it with you. This is our first panel, so bear with us. But the big thing was we go to cons, all three of us, and we'll introduce ourselves, but we love going to cons, and it seems like any time we've done a con, the feedback is the same, where there's never enough LGBT content at cons. So we wanted to try and help. So I hope you enjoy this, okay? Just a few things. I'll start by talking in general about women, but as we dive deeper into the marginalized groups, we understand that this could be sensitive content, this could be emotionally challenging, but our goal here is to make this a safe space. We want this to be comfortable for you. So we hope we can do that for you. We're not here to bash the industry. We know they could do better. We all know they can do better. But we really just want to highlight the good things that we've seen in very recent times. So you'll see a lot of the content we have is very contemporary stuff within the last few years. We really just want to focus on the good things. So we want to get through our portion. We really want to hear your part. We would love to hear what you have to say. We're just going to go through it, and then let's have a really good discussion at the end, okay? All right, so here we are. Why are we doing this? Why do we want to do this? I'm Barbara. I'm a huge gamer, but I think my focus, I'm speaking primarily about the women's section. I'm a physician assistant in Maryland. I practice in family medicine, but my huge focus and passion is in women's health.
I'm Shantae. I'm a games critic, freelance journalist for games. I've been writing for about 5 years now. I also have a podcast that just recently started in December called Non-Player Conversations, and it's a weekly podcast where I talk to people that are involved in games in some way. So maybe they're a chef, and so we talk about that kind of relationship between cooking and games, things like that. And I focus primarily on marginalized groups, so people of color, people within the LGBTQ+ communities, because I want to highlight them and show that they have a voice when they are usually ignored. So my focus is basically just trying to uplift and show the good parts of games when there are a lot of not good things in games.
And my name's Kelsey. I work at Firaxis Games currently. I have kind of a total of nearly 8 years in the game industry under my belt. I really like researching and reading about POC and LGBTQIA issues, as well as issues that are important to the disabled community. And I like to eat cereal in a box sometimes.
Right. So. All right, so this is how we're kind of going to do this. We want to briefly talk about, just compare Western versus Eastern video game industries. I'll dive in more into the women's section, but Shantae will focus more on the marginalized groups, and Kelsey will do more on the LGBTQ+. And we all love Pokemon, if you can tell. All right, just it's just brief, and I want to go over this. We all probably see this, but I think when we say Western, and we're talking mainly European, Canadian, us in the U.S., I think there's been such promise in the last few years of showing good representation in video games, specifically in focusing on person with color and the LGBTQ family, especially with minimal tokenizing. And we all know the Eastern game culture is a little more reserved, but they're getting there, and we actually did want to highlight a few examples of what we consider good progress in the last few years concerning Eastern video game companies. So first, I'm a big Pokemon fan. So you see this all the time. Since Generation 2 of Pokemon Crystal, Professor Oak always asks, "Are you a boy or are you a girl?" And this has been ongoing since Crystal. Well, it's really exciting to see that with the most recent game of Let's Go, they don't address gender. They just kind of tell, what do you look like, which I think is huge. And what's interesting is I did look into this. This is a direct translation from the Japanese. This is not us translating it to just say, what do you look like? In the Japanese text, this is a literal translation. I was getting feedback about this in the sense that, maybe they just did it to just limit the amount of frames, because if they have to have a selection, all of a sudden, there's a new frame of having to pick the girl or the boy. But I think just talking to everyone and seeing everything online, people will prefer to think that this is actually a big thing to help address non-binary individuals. So I think this is huge. I'd like to see, like Gen 8 has been reported to come out this year. I'd love to see how it's addressed with this game, the new game coming out. So have fun looking to see what celebrities you recognize while I talk. It's a fun game here. But what I want to touch upon with the Miiverse is the whole concept of you can customize your Mii to look exactly like you. And the cool thing about it is the hairstyles are not sectioned off anymore, whereas the girls get a girl hairstyle and the guys get a guyish hairstyle. You can just kind of pick whatever you want at this point. And I think that's been really huge in terms of addressing yourself as an individual to figuring out what you look like. So I think that's huge with Nintendo. All right. This is so cool to me. So 2 things in this picture I want to address. Like, Link is in feminine clothing. You now get to run around as Link in feminine clothing, for one. Number 2, the Gerudo women, they now come in all colors. They range from very fair to very dark. And this is neat, in my opinion. The fact that there's so much representation with the colors in this village of the Gerudo women, I think that's showing a lot of promise with representation.
Their body types were pretty interesting too. Did anybody who played Breath of the Wild notice that? There was just such a variety.
They're so sexy.
Of different body types, and I was just like, wow.
I kind of go into this in a moment actually, because I love the series. All right, so this is also huge. I don't know if anyone plays Valkyria Chronicles, but the 4th one just came out a few months ago, and we now have a first transgender character. This is a scout you can recruit very early on the game. Rosetta is something usually is a preferred character. She's got pretty cool abilities. And a scout is honestly one of the best people in my opinion. So this is your first transgender. They've played in the past they've had a gay individual in one of the first ones, but they kind of made it out of a joke character. This is a serious character. We do realize that they are kind of dead naming her, bringing up the old name, but we kind of realize that your information isn't private when you're in the military, so we're going to give that a slide. But we really like what they did with her, especially since looking through the game, they don't really go into the backstory. They kind of just focus as her now. And she's actually a character that's people go to seek out advice. So she's a character who's been giving a lot of advice to people. So this is just huge, in my opinion. All right. So that was just more on the focus on the Eastern. I just want to go into women in general. All right. We all know what Tomb Raider Lara Croft looked like in the original version. She's very much come a long way. I honestly think she's hardly recognizable from the original version. The huge thing about her is she doesn't have Barbie doll proportions anymore. She doesn't have lip fillings, and she doesn't have makeup. She looks very natural and very realistic. She's not wearing leather booty ass shorts anymore. She's wearing appropriate clothing, which is what I'm trying to stress. And actually that's what you'll see with a few more slides. It's the whole this looks realistic now. And she's got a better bust to hip to waist ratio in the sense that she doesn't have the Betty Boop figure anymore, which is very unrealistic. She's muscular. She looks like she should be able to handle the terrain she's in. She has scars. She's been through a lot. This is just brilliant in the terms of Lara Croft and how far she's come from the original one. So Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I wanted to point out Cassandra for a moment because I really like her build that they made. She's almost the same build as Alexios, which I thought was pretty impressive. And again, there seems to be this awesome, amazing focus in women characters these days that they're not heavy on makeup. They're very more natural looking. They have more proportionate dimensions. They're muscular. She's muscular. She has scars. Again, she's wearing appropriate clothing. They're pretty much the same, which is just fantastic. So Aloy, the same concept here where I'm getting at is, she's wearing appropriate clothing with not a lot of makeup, very realistic. And what I like about her, she's kind of got an androgynous face. If you were to actually take the hair away, it's a very androgynous face, and I think that's great too. All right, so Urbosa, we're gonna go back to her because I really love her. This is just sexy to me. The fact that she's ripped and thick and tall, this is just murdering. She is also murdering something right now. This is just this is just hot. So I really just wanted to bring it back to Urbosa because she's fucking awesome. All right, so let's go into Overwatch. I wanted to bring up 2 video games real quick, particularly Overwatch, because there's been this huge, awesome emphasis in including more female playable characters in games. Overwatch has done a really good job into making it about a 50-50 of female to male characters. And it's not just being able to have that 50-50 of having more female characters, it's also the design of their characters. I know there was a big issue with Tracer coming out, and everyone's like, oh, she's skinny and tall. And then they introduced Zarya, and it's whoa, she is a big butch woman. That is awesome, and she looks sweet. She looks so cool. I love her character design. So we also have Mei, who's a little bit on the plus side, and I think more people can relate to her. And she's also super smart. She's a scientist. This is just this great role models here. And then I wanted to point out Moria, because of her androgynous look to her. Overwatch has done a very good job with inclusion of different body types and everything. Last thing I wanted to point out, give a huge mention to Civilization. They've done a really good job introducing more female characters to play as. This is Amana Tori. She's the first black leader, or first black female leader, so that's a big deal. Civ has done a really good job introducing more female leaders. I think basically it's a really nice trend to see that there's more options now. And in terms of having more options and also the fact that the women look more realistic, this is just awesome.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara. So this is my turn. You can change the panel or the slide. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about diversity panels and what they do and what they don't do. I think that there's a lot of panels going on in different conventions about the importance of diversity and what we can learn from things like that. And that's very important. But I think it's also important to know that this isn't necessarily going to solve anything immediately. These discussions are really important to have, but I think it's important to also think about what we do after the discussion and after the panel, because I know a lot of the people in the audience already knows what we're saying. So how do we talk to people who are not in this room, and how do we get them into these rooms, or just have those conversations personally, one-on-one? Because they may not come to these conventions, they may not want to for whatever reason. So when we talked about how we wanted to have the panel, we initially talked about talking about what's wrong, what the problems that are in gaming right now, and I kind of pushed back on that because not necessarily because you shouldn't have those conversations, because you absolutely should. But I wanted to also recognize that there are some movements that we have made, and I think it's important to celebrate those as we also move forward and talk about what sucks. So anyway, there was one article I wanted to talk about that was called Uncanny Magazine, it was in Uncanny Magazine. It was called "Diversity Panels Are the Beginning, Not the End." And one of the quotes in the article said that, thank you, one of the problems with panels can sometimes be that it's as if the only thing marginalized people can talk about is the plight of marginalized people. And as someone who writes articles, and a lot of those articles are about a game that may have done something racist or problematic, those articles are important to have, but it's also very tiring. I'm sick of writing them. And I know I'll continue to write them as there continues to be problems, but sometimes I also want to write about what I like about a game and why you should buy it. So that's kind of the mindset that I'm going here with. So this slide here are like all recent games that have really impacted me, that I've really loved for one reason or another. And I've focused a lot on people of color, primarily black people, because I am black, and that's like what I stare at. That's like what I look at all the time. And I think there's some great games here, and I wanted to put titles on them, but then I kind of went picture crazy, and so there's not any of that. But and I think a lot of this shows growth in indie games and also in AAA titles. So usually where we find the most progress is in indie titles, independent people who don't have to be chained to corporate money or whatever. But I think there are a lot of games here. For example, the bottom one is Twintel, who I personally love a lot. I play her all the time. I've played ARMS for 700 hours. But then there are smaller titles such as Dandara, which is the central photo by a company, I believe in Brazil. I know it's in South America. I'm so sorry. But I think it's really important to show that what we have here is indie titles are really at the forefront of what's bringing this progress, and AAA titles, bigger companies, I think are finally listening and looking and seeing those types of things. And I added a photo of my Animal Crossing character. That's from Pocket Camp, because that's the first time you've been able to pick a skin color in Animal Crossing, and Animal Crossing has been out since the GameCube. And Austin Walker wrote a really great article about having to make your skin darker by basically getting a tan in older iterations of Animal Crossing, and finally they just give us that option. It's very similar to the Pokemon example that Barbara gave. So these are just things that I've loved, that show the diversity that is coming, and that I'm like very excited to see. Can you go to the next slide, please? So I wanted to talk about what happens if you like a game or a character that is seen as problematic for whatever reason. And I'm sure those opinions are valid. I don't want to say ignore criticism, because that's not the problem. I think it's important to recognize the criticism and then figure out personally what you do with that. So I added this photo. It's an Onion article where a woman takes a short half-hour break from being feminist to enjoy a TV show. Because I think that's necessary. I think, like, if you wanted to watch, I don't know, Say Yes to the Dress or Bridezilla, and your brain is like, you've got this academic brain or this feminist brain that's, kind of ticking off all the problems with it. But at the same time, you have this emotional, I just like it. You know what I mean? So what do you do when you have that struggle of, I know this may be a problem, but I also can't necessarily ignore how I'm feeling about it. And I think that's a personal thing that you have to go through with yourself, because there are some people that will be able to easily say, okay, this is problematic, I'm done, never again, I don't need to hear that song, I don't need to see that musician or artist. And then there are others that I think will really need to temper with themselves and figure out, what do I do with this song that I like by Kanye? you know what I mean? Like, what do you do when you... So, for example, these are games that I personally like that have been pushed back on, that I agree with. So I wanted to talk about the one at the bottom there that looks like some weird thing at the bottom there. That game is called Chuchel, and it came out in 2018 in March, and there was a lot of pushback on the design. The original design is the one in black. So the game is kind of like this puzzle game. It's supposed to be very cutesy, and that's supposed to be a dust bunny, like a dust ball, that's walking around, and pretty much the only objective is to find like this one strawberry that was taken from it. Cute. And in practice, yeah, it sounds really cute. But if you look at the design, it's really problematic, and there was a lot of criticism in that it resembled blackface, and that the chase for fruit, may be parallel to watermelon or other such racist things. And I played the game, I think when it came out or somewhere close to it, and I did genuinely enjoy the game. I thought it was very fun, and I thought it was really cute. But I also had problems with what it looked like. So I kind of kept it to myself because I didn't know how to talk about it. You know, it's like it's hard to figure out what to say sometimes. And so the second design is after a lot of pushback, after almost a year of the game being out, they redesigned it to be orange. And when something like that happens, I think it's important to also ask, well, now what? Is the game automatically okay now that that design's been fixed, or has the past tampered with it too much? And again, I think that's very personal. You know, like I don't think there's a hard and fast rule as to how to handle that sort of situation. But it's something that you have to personally do. Were you going to say something?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. I heard a mouth move. Let me look at my notes.
Barbara and I
quick.
fangirl over Shantae because she always has such great points to make about things, and we're like, she's so great.
I don't know why. So, as a journalist and as someone that writes about games, most of my articles are about opinions. It's my opinion. It's about interpretation. Unless it's a news article, where obviously I try to be as factual as I can and try to get my opinion out. Or, you know, not in it. But for the most part, I'm just talking about what I like or don't like about a game. And so I really have to sit with myself and think about the power of criticism. What is it doing, and what is it not doing? How is it helping? How is it hurting? Because I think that even criticism that is meant to be helpful can sometimes be performative or just be harmful. And I guess I'll talk about that a little bit in a second. So I wanted to talk about two forms of criticism, or two forms of theory. And I have a very academic brain right now because I'm in grad school. So I've been reading a lot of essays about theory and digital media. Anyway, so the two brains, I suppose, the two theories is suspicion, and reparative thinking. So sometimes it's called paranoia, suspicion as well, but that's not something that's really used because that was kind of coined by Freud. And so let's just say it's suspicion versus reparative thinking. And so suspicious thinking is, and by the way, I don't want to say that this is mine because it's not at all. This is from an article or an essay I read by Eve Sedgwick, who was a queer theories academic, critical theory academic. And so this was kind of geared more towards queer readings of camp and stories and things like that. And so, and she was not at all thinking about video games, but I'm going to use it for video games. So when you're thinking about suspicion theory, it's kind of like you assume the worst, basically. That's the simplest way of saying. You assume the worst of that piece of work, of that media, whether it's video games or a painting or poem, whatever. Reparative thinking is when you recognize that it has problems, but you use it to heal yourself. It's more of a, how does this work in benefit of you, rather than how is this oppressing me? And I don't think this is a versus. This is not a skeptic versus reparative. This is a both. This is a, when do we need it? When do we need which one and when? You know what I mean? So that's what I think about when I write, and that's what I think about when I play games is, how is this game just beyond repair? How is this game just not going to work for me, not going to help me at all? And when is it that this game is helping me out? You know what I mean? And I think Chuchel for me is one of those games that is reparative. It was one of those games that I could forgive because I personally recognize that even though it looks racist, it wasn't its intent, and I forgave it, which I think is very controversial to say, especially since this is being recorded and it's going to be on YouTube.
No, I would agree. I would say, look, maybe they screwed up, but the fact that they've gone to try and fix it, I think, speaks volumes too. So you got to give them credit that they were actually addressing it and wanting to do something about it.
And I do.
So I agree.
Yeah, and I do want to say that if there are people and I'm just using Choochel because this is personal, but if there are any people who thought, no, this is beyond repair, even when they changed it, it still sucks, I think that's valid. It's important to recognize the person, how intimate art is. Even games that are multiplayer are intimate. They have that personal grasp on you. And so I guess one of the other things that I wanted to say, because I have so many quotes, but I'm not going to like blast you with all of them.
Blast me.
So another thing I wanted to talk about was Susan Sontag was another critical theorist, and she wrote an essay called Against Interpretation. And that essay was basically about when you interpret something too much, when you're too busy trying to find the meaning, trying to dig too hard, that you break the work apart. That it no longer is art. It's kind of just like this thing to consume. And that's something I think about when I write and when I write my pieces, because they are my interpretation. And so I think it's important to, I guess I'll just use the quote that I was thinking of. So she wrote, in place of hermeneutics, we need an erotics of art. And that's basically, instead of thinking too hard, you kind of need to just feel your feelings. You know what I mean? Like, there's like, especially in game journalism, like, because I'm in it, I'm thinking, whenever I see a game, and maybe this is just because I want money, because who doesn't want money, but I'm just like, how can I write this piece? How can I make this, like, good? How can I make it so that people will read it? And I kind of put away the fact that this is a game that I might enjoy, or for whatever reason, I'm just like, I need to break this thing apart so I can, publish it and get some money out of it. But I think even if you're not a game journalist, I think that there are moments where we see something, we see like a trailer for a game, and it's like, oh, this is gonna suck. You know what I mean? And it may well suck, and that's fine. But I also want to encourage people to, like, I guess, be a little softer, be a little, let the eroticism of feelings really get at you. I hope that makes sense. My poet brain. I'm going to grad school for poetry, by the way. Oh, thanks. I don't know why that didn't really need applause.
Awesome.
But that's just what I'm feeling. So sometimes, I think sometimes interpretation opinions can go too far. I think that sometimes it's better to breathe. And I think also this is because of social media. I mean, like, it's just really easy to just blast something real quick.
Yeah.
And it's addictive. Like, I'm on Twitter all the time. I see opinions all the time. Ones I agree with, ones I don't agree with, it doesn't really matter because I see them all. And at that point, the game stuff, because I'm looking at, like, games theory all the time, like, the game stops being a game. It's like, what's this opinion about this game? So I encourage us to see more, hear more, and feel more, which I know sounds like
I think it's pretty.
it's so emotional. Like, I really am. But I really encourage that, because I think there are absolutely times where we need to be critical. This is not a don't be critical lecture that I'm giving. This is a be critical, but also give yourself time to just feel. Just be like, you know what, I liked that game. There were things about Detroit Become Human that I liked, and then there were other parts where they were like, I don't understand what you're doing with this weird slavery parallel, but it's not working. So, but there are things I liked about that game.
What
So,
about other games? I don't know this one. Like, I don't.
Which one?
Like,
Uncharted?
Like, I don't know. Like, please tell me why.
Oh, Uncharted is a game I like, but a lot of the villains tend to be people of color. Uncharted is, Nathan Drake is just a white man. That's his superhero, basically. He's a superhero. His power is white. So he goes around to different countries trying to find this treasure, and people, like, the people of that country is like, they tend to be evil. They're seen as like trying to hinder his heroism. But it's also a game I love. It's a game that I really liked the story of Nathan Drake and Elena, and I wanted them to be together until, like, the last game. But yeah, I think, Yeah, it's just like God of War was a game that came out recently where it's another dad game. That was the criticism. There's a lot of games about fathers. There's not a lot of games about mothers.
Or I was like, where's this going?
Or like if there is stories about mothers, then they die, or their kid dies.
Nice.
So in this case, the mother did die. So, and the story was just about Kratos and his
Barbara,
son.
can you remove the Dream Daddy image from the slide, please?
Well, shall we move on?
Yeah, I'm basically done. Now we're just shitting on games, but that's fine. We can shit and praise at the same time. That's really my point. So I
was there.
Yeah, so I just encourage us to like sometimes like take those 5 minutes and get that feminist brain like down for a second and like bring our emotions up and figure out why do we like Say Yes to the Dress so much? Because it's good. But why yeah. So
Like midnight with the ice cream, I guess. Yeah, if we're going that way.
yeah, absolutely. So that was my spiel. Thanks.
Like,
Ready?
yeah, now that you all have like tasted the rainbow, and if you haven't, Matt, get on it. Skittles.
Yeah, we do have Skittles we're handing out if you want some.
Hi, everyone. So one of the main issues I wanted to talk about as a queer person with LGBTQ plus characters in games, there's a lot of issues out there, but one of the main things I wanted to point out, like issues in games related like to how common the appearance of like a trans character or a bisexual character or, you know, a gay character. It's not just how often they appear. It's also that they're largely represented as romantic options for the player character or for other non-player characters. They're always like a romantic option, or their coming out story is like the most important thing that their character is based on. I think that sucks. And I mean, it's a common issue in media to occur. Like they just kind of throw like, oh, this character's bi, and there's a romance. Did you hear that there was a romance? Yeah. Okay. She doesn't have anything else that she does. She does die though. Or they're just like very over sexualized, and yeah, it's just like a common issue that it really bugs me a lot because I want to see myself in games. I really do. But, you know, I want to be like some awesome. Can you show the Twitter slide?
Oh, what the?
I think I put it in there. Which one? Back. Oh, no, it's gone.
Oh no.
Oh, I don't know what happened to it. I had a cool like Twitter mention where somebody was like, you know, I want to see like a trans space explorer. I want to see, you know, the bisexual time traveler. I want to see like an amazing lesbian like adventurer, and she like, you know, murders people or something. I don't know.
I do actually have a game, a bisexual time traveler. Yeah.
Do you really?
It's called Time Spinner. It's really good.
I would love to play that game. So yeah, like, and don't get me wrong, like, you know, I love seeing queer characters or intersex characters or asexual characters of any kind in games. It you know, warms my heart. But so as somebody who's been working in the game industry for a pretty long time, I've seen like a lot of different sides of how different companies approach inclusion of marginalized people. But like overall, I'm very proud to have worked with a couple companies that just have very open-minded developers. They want to hear the voices of people who aren't them. And I'm very proud to, you know, have worked with companies and studios that, you know, have a very like open-minded approach to gaming, and like the kind of experiences that they portray. But I just wanted to briefly touch on characters that I've experienced as a player outside of my work, because, you know, playing games all day, every day, it just like you start to like kind of play games differently, and you're not thinking about like the story or the characters anymore. You're thinking about like, oh man, like I know how they did that certain like oh, I saw this before in my travels as a QA person. So, but anyway, and I also wanted to touch on some characters that were important to some of my friends who like had mentioned like, "Do you see this dark skinned character? She looks just like me." And I'm like, oh, I'm so happy that you found somebody who represents you. So, and I just wanted to mention like characters that have had positive influences on marginalized players in general. So slide. So I'm going to kind of work from the bottom over and then up. And again, these are just like my personal experiences. Like I play a lot of very similar games, especially like in the BioWare realm and the farming sim realm. Please don't judge me. I like turnips and I like marriage to women. So at the bottom was a game that I actually worked on when I was first getting started in the industry. I was like 19, 20 or some shit, and I was like, I don't want to do college papers anymore. I want to play video games forever. And I just kind of walked up and was like, give me a job. And they were like, so, why do you think you should work here? I'm like, because I really like playing Fallout 3. And they were like, okay, you're hired. So we made this really cool game called Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. Yes, if you guys don't know, it was kind of a game based on the works of R.A. Salvatore and Todd McFarlane's art. And I just kind of found this when I was doing some research, like trying to remember, like, what are characters that influenced me? And I was very angry when I found this particular character. Apparently, a month after I left Big Huge Games to pursue other options for access, they had added these 2 bisexual characters in the DLC after I left. And right there is pictured the player character and the Maid of Windermere. She's kind of like a, I forget what they're called. They're like the Fae of the game. And I was just like very enraged because like that game was such a good game. Like you had such a great variety of options. It wasn't like weird about like skin tone the way Skyrim was when they were like, oh yeah, only the Red Guard are black people and they can jump real good. And what was the other thing? I can't remember. There was like just a lot of weird cringiness with some of Skyrim's options, but they were like, yeah, you can have any skin tone pretty much in any race, and it's very open. But I was just like very surprised that they decided to jam this bisexual character into a game that I was testing. Anyway. So next we have Creme Classy, my sweet baby boy. So when I was doing research, I was kicking myself later because I almost forgot Creme, my favorite boy. So I just want to talk briefly about Dragon Age. My partner was like, yeah, you should play Dragon Age because it's a great game and you would love it and you can marry people. I was like, oh, great, I love marrying people, also murder. And so, like, Morgan, like, walks up with her, like, beautiful boobaroos. And I'm like, oh, who is she? I want to marry her. And he was like, well, you can't because she's straight. And I was like, oh, God. So I was like, are there any other ladies around here? And he was like, well, there's Liliana. And I'm like, sorry, she's a little boring. I kind of moved in with Alistair, and that was great, and that was a story. But, as I was playing through Dragon Age, I was just like, oh my God, like, they're getting better and better. Like, they're adding more characters. There's a little more diversity as far as, like, gender identity or sexuality, and I was, like, so excited. And then finally we get to Inquisition, and they bring me this beautiful hunk, this loyal character, and I was like really interested to find out like Creme is trans, and they talk about it in a way that I personally feel like is very true to kind of the trans experience, and they didn't do anything gross. They didn't like do anything cringy about it. And, you know, he's very open about his transness, and he's just like, yeah, that's like, this is my life. And, you know, I've been fighting alongside Iron Bull's side ever since. And I just like, I cried. I was like, you're such a beautiful character. So I wanted to include Krem, and as well as Iron Bull, because he was just, I love him very much. He's a little problematic, but I identified with him, and I was just like, huh, you are my Patronus, you beautiful being. So he's very important to me. But also Commander Shepard. If you know me, I named my dogs after Mass Effect characters. Tali and Liara. But I thought, like, Commander Shepard would be a really important character to mention. Earlier, we were in the Belvedere Lounge, and we were talking to a guy who said he really liked the Firaxis games and how that kind of helped him come out of his shell. But he was saying, you know, games that have characters, main player characters that you are able to customize is very important to, like, any marginalized person, because it's like, I can make this character look like me. But beyond that, as a queer person, you know, the fact that there were options of like people to talk to, and they weren't just romantic options, and you know, you could make your character look like you could, you know, kind of navigate it in a certain way. But more than anything, I really liked that Commander Shepard, regardless of gender, is never treated at any point like she's less of a person if she's chosen as a female character. She's equal to every other male character in the game, and that's very important to me. I wanted to bring up Hancock, my husband, because he just has that big bisexual energy that I feel is very much missing, and here's a great romanceable option, regardless of the player character's gender. Stardew Valley. So, that was weak. Come on. Incredible fucking game. Excuse me very much. Okay, so I played a lot of Harvest Moon. Anybody Harvest Moon? Yeah. Okay. My frickin' wedding Barbara's husband Matt made us like these incredible Harvest Moon like wedding cake toppers. So like I'm obsessed with Harvest Moon. But one of the things that sucks about Harvest Moon is like every time I start a game, I like always like pick the girl, if you can be a girl in Harvest Moon. And I'd be like, where the ladies at? And my husband's like, yeah, no, there aren't any ladies. And so it's like, what do you mean? I can't have them. So, you know, he kind of encouraged me to play Stardew Valley, which like now he's like a mod of like 3 different Stardew Valley groups. 2, I'm sorry. So, you know, I started playing Stardew Valley. I was like, all right, it's like another Harvest Moon. The art style is a little bit different. And I was like, oh, you know, what do the marriageable characters look like? And he just like slapped me with a guidebook, and he was like, there are ladies. And so I was like, oh, there's a goth girl. And like they're just so like awesomely varied, and they just have like very interesting character traits, and like, you know, you can marry anybody the whole town is freaking pansexual. Like, what more could you ask for? So yeah, I just think Stardew Valley, beyond just being an amazing fucking game, they really kind of opened the door for like a lot of queer people. You know, like I grew up in a very conservative, strict family, and I wasn't really able to, you know, express my sexual. When I came out, it wasn't a good situation, and you know, many times my sexuality was like denied or stepped on or invalidated, and it really sucked. So like through games like Mass Effect or Stardew Valley or what have you, like it's kind of been a way for me to embrace that sexuality and receive that validation that I never got at home. It's really sad, but I feel like the stories that they tell embrace those identities and help us kind of open up to those things. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
The last two games that I have on this particular slide, I just wanted to point out.
Please tell me what Dream Daddy is. Like, what is this?
Dream Daddy! A friend of mine, a gay trans gentleman, was telling me that he found this game called Dream Daddy. And initially, I laughed my ass off at the title because I'm like, everybody, like, Zaddy is a meme right now. So he's like, look, dude, you have to play this freaking game. It's so good.
I see in the text it says dad dating simulator. What is it?
It's a dad dating simulator.
Dating simulator.
And so going in, I was like, all the guys have to be gay, right? That's not the case.
Oh, no, okay.
And I was just like, beyond like the writing is hilarious. There's like freaking dad jokes galore. Again, what more could you ask for? But like, just like the variation of like characters is incredible, and they're all like drastically different. They have like these crazy backstories, and I was just like, this is like a game I've never played before. Like, they approached fatherhood as a gay dad, and it's a very like warm-hearted game. There can be some like sadness or dangerous situations, and it's worth mentioning. And I think anybody, regardless of sexuality or gender, like, should play this freaking game because it's just hilarious.
Like, what console is this?
I played it on Steam.
Okay, all right.
I think there was a mobile version, but don't quote me on that. The last one, we were talking about like Eastern companies not really focusing too much, but occasionally on LGBTQ characters or, characters of different like gender. But we're kind of looking through and going like, man, like, where are the non-binary characters at? Where are the genderqueer and gender fluid characters at? Did you have? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really great point, actually. Did you guys hear her? That oh my gosh, I didn't even like think about that. Where was? Oh yeah, Story of Seasons. So we were mentioning like a lot of Eastern games sometimes like they kind of miss the mark when it comes to like characters of different gender, and I was like kind of doing some research, and I felt kind of stupid because I completely skipped over the fact that like Harvest Moon has had multiple like characters of other genders, and beyond just like there's like always like the occasional like androgynous character, and I'm like, you're a host. You're a Japanese host. That's great. But we were looking there and we were like, oh, we found a gender fluid character. Wow. And so Story of Seasons was a game that I didn't realize had a really strong gender fluid character, and I intend on playing it now because like I love that series, but it just like, it's amazing how like we kind of miss these things sometimes, or it's like lost in translation. They don't like include it in the American translation sometimes, but this one is like clearly kind of laid out for us to look at. Yeah, the next slide, please. Yay! Okay. Yeah, so again, we were talking about games where like you can create your own characters is really important to like representation or exploring your sexuality or your gender. But one of my favorite series that I just felt like I really had to touch on was The Sims. Early on, I had The Sims, I got it like at a book fair. And I was like, oh man, I can make characters and they can kiss each other, and I'm 8 years old. And so like, one of like the main ways that I found I was queer was making girls kiss each other in The Sims and making guys kiss each other in The Sims. And, you know, beyond like Sims just being like endlessly entertaining with like locking people in four walls and bookcases on fire, and making people swim forever. That's just cruel. Who would do that? Was, you know, just kind of exploring like relationships. I felt very at home and very comfortable with Sims, despite it being on a laptop that took 5 minutes to scroll an inch. I'm really happy that they're kind of like branching out with The Sims, and I really kind of hope they latch on to like gender in the future, identity in general. It's really cool. That's Cass in the little center bottom. She's a Fallout character that I fell in love with and cannot have in real life. She's just a very entertaining queer character. I wanted to point out she has a very like extensive storyline that, even though like a lot of people were like, I hate Fallout New Vegas, there's cows flying around. She was not a cow that was flying around, but she does drink a lot. The one in the corner, Night in the Woods, in case you cannot see that text, like I can barely. This is a game that I just got on Switch, and I heard it's very gay. But beyond that, I heard it's kind of like in the realm of like Over the Garden Wall or like Adventure Time. So I feel like a lot of queer people kind of gravitate to that like kind of aesthetic, and I just thought I'd mention it for people who haven't heard of it. It's a very good game. Please play it. It's very, how much is it on the Switch store, Russell? Yeah, okay. Yeah, oh, thank you. Thank you. It was 10 for Christmas, but you missed it, sorry. Lastly, I just wanted to point out some characters that were important to some of my friends. We were talking about games, and I was like, you should tell me things for my panel. And they were very forthcoming. So we had like a big chat, and they were just pointing out two mobile game characters from Fate Grand Order. On the right, we have Queen of Sheba, and on the left, we have Archer Arjuna. Archer is just like basically a class in that game. I'm going to play Fate eventually, but people are crazy in the Fate Grand Order community, and I'm very scared. But I just wanted to point out, these aren't LGBTQ characters specifically, but my friend was saying, like, I really hate it when I can't find a character in my skin tone, and she was just kind of over the moon about this particular character, Queen of Sheba. And then I have another friend who's from India who was like very excited about Arjuna, who's also from India. But these are two queer women who were just like gushing about these characters, and they're like, and I've never played the game before. I just like that they look like me. So I just thought I'd like kind of throw them in there. The last two, on the right we have Evelyn de Grand Prix. I tried to play this game. It's Assassin's Creed Liberation. I'm not sure how I feel about it yet, so I don't feel like I can fully illustrate like what it's like, but I just wanted to point her out as like a black woman who like rescues slaves and kills angry white racists. I
love her character design.
I thought her outfit is like very smart, despite the fact she like, spoilers, pulls it out of a box in one piece. And I laughed very hard. I like that she has like kind of cool braids at one point, and then like she has like another outfit where she's got like this completely different hairstyle, and I was like, okay, cool, yeah, that sounds fun. So that's just another character I want to mention. But back onto our LGBT plus side, My Time in Portia is another like farm simulator, and it's kind of like Stardew Valley, but the art style is completely different. There's a lot of great characters in there, and in most cases you can marry them regardless of gender. So I just want to point that one out because it's a really fun game, and you can jump on houses, and you can kill really cute llamas, and I didn't think I would kill the llamas, but I needed the meat, so But it just, again, is one of those games that kind of helps. I feel like it helps a lot of, I've heard a lot of queer people tell me like, wow, like it's really nice being able to like play a game and not go, man, I really can't relate. So yeah, that's about all I had to say about those. Those are some things I like. I hope you enjoyed it.
I like it. Thank you for sticking it out with us. We would love to continue the conversation. So please, is there any questions or comments or anything? Yes?
Before the indie gaming revolution, it felt like the only ways that we could get representation was
Yes.
and I'm wondering, how much are you seeing nowadays these evolutions into the big
I don't know. There's a few game developers in the room, so I'm curious if they have any input with this. I don't know if Kelsey, you do.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I'm really I'm really lucky to work for a company that's pretty open about that sort of thing, and the developers very much listen to what marginalized people have to say. But I can't say that happens for every game company. Like, it's still largely like run by white dudes who are like, I'm gonna add this one character because I think that people would like it, but they don't really think about, wait a second, I'm not even gay. And I'm like, sometimes that can be really cringy where I like hear that kind of thing. I'm like, oh, they didn't even like ask the one person in the room who like is that identity. So it kind of sucks, but I think a lot of game devs are a lot more open and are, seeing the articles and the Twitter posts, and they're hearing what, their base is saying. And I hope that moves forward for more companies.
Yeah, I would say that there are companies that are starting to hire like diversity trainers.
Yeah, yeah.
But at the same time, they're also not hiring people to like make the games still.
Yeah.
Like there's still, I think white people are still like the leading population of people who make the games. So it's like there's like this weird progress where it's like, well, you're trying to listen, but you also need to hire us. Like that would be good too.
Yeah.
So it's moving, but it's a weird slow river.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you. Yes. Yes.
I have that book.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
We were just talking about this.
Yeah, for anyone that doesn't see that book, it's pretty much like this big, thick book of women in gaming. It's like developers, journalists. It's just like a big kind of like directory, like index of like all these women doing work in gaming. So I
Yes, totally
recommend
agree.
it.
Yes.
Yes.
That one over there. Oh.
Just like how diversity is coming out in games more. So I'm an associate producer for Civilization 6. And when we were talking about opening cinematic for that, as a parent and their child and like exploring history. Now in this room of all male developers,
Wow. Jesus. I didn't know that. That's awesome. that you're the
Yeah.
cause of that. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The great thing about that was like,
Yes.
It just takes like people in the industry, like marginalized groups, for people to be there and say, hey,
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
white male story that everyone's like rooting for.
Right.
Yeah.
Yourself out there. Yes.
Just to
Thank
add
you.
on to that, like after Sarah had like said that, everybody kind of forgot. But a lady had actually messaged her and said like, look, this character was really important to me. I'm a woman who's been playing Civ for a really long time. To see like a woman represented in this type of like almost like male dominated game, like this is really important to me. And like I'm crying, she's crying, we're all crying. Like,
Awesome.
yeah, a very proud moment for Firaxis. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, you. Uh-huh. Cool. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. That's such a cool word. Mm. Mm. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, that's legit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I feel like I feel like fighting games have always like tried to be like different, like because they needed their character. Every character needs to be diverse in their own way. They need to stand out. Because if they all look the same, why would you even play the game? Like you need to kind of connect with that character. I was just playing Punch Out in the arcade room, and I think about it a lot because every character in Punch Out is like completely different from a completely different culture and country. And there are definitely things you could say that's like, I don't really know about this Soda Popinski dude. Like there's some issues here. It's like obviously Punch Out is kind of going like hardcore on like the stereotypes in that game, but it's like that kind of happens in fighting games that I'm like kind of also I guess appreciate. At least they're very different in that way. But yeah.
Oh, okay.
Whoa.
Damn.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay.
Do you have
Yeah.
something else to say? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely think there are times where it's performative.
Yeah,
Very much
To put
so,
in
yeah.
just anyone. It's just like, hey, you want a black character? Here, you got it. It's, you know,
Yeah,
it's like,
I agree.
But it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
You know, like it's,
I think
and
that was like Valkyria Chronicles 1 with Jan. Like, that's why I was like,
This is very half-assed.
yeah.
yeah.
There you go.
That's why with the 4 with the new trans character, that was awesome. They did it well.
Yeah.
But like exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Whenever I think of like the most performative black character, I think of a character in Heavy Rain, where it's like I think his name was Mad Dog, and he was basically just there to try to kill you to be a villain. It's just like, what the hell is this? Like, I was,
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So we got to wrap it up.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, we have to
Ryan.
wrap it up. Sorry.
No, no.
No, it's fine.
I wish we could talk more.
Actually, like, if you guys want to stick around and talk about stuff,
Yeah, we'll be in
just
the hallways.
talking
Yeah, we'll be around,
on the
so-
hallway. But
Yeah.
thank
Thank you
guys
so much for
Thank you so
joining.
much.
Thank you for being so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.